What did I do for my mother to treat me like this?
Hey there! Grab yourself a coffee and enjoy the story. Sarah squeezed her eyes tightly, trying to prevent tears from escaping. Her hand trembled so much, she almost dropped the picture frame she was holding, an old photo of her with her sister Melissa, both smiling in a park when they were children. The memory now seemed so distant, so false. "Your sister was always better than you." Her mother's words still echoed in her mind, like an endless scream. It wasn't the first time Eleanor had said something like this, but it had never been so direct, so cruel, so final. The argument had started over something so insignificant. Sarah had only mentioned she was thinking about returning to university to finish the degree she'd abandoned years ago. Her mother immediately compared her to Melissa, the perfect daughter, the successful doctor, the exemplary mother of two adorable children. "Why can't you be more like your sister? She didn't waste opportunities like you," Eleanor had said, with that tone Sarah knew so well, contempt thinly disguised as maternal concern. Sarah had tried to defend herself, explain her dreams, her renewed ambitions. But then the conversation had escalated, old wounds were reopened, and Eleanor, with her face contorted in anger, had shouted those words that now seemed branded into her soul. She threw the picture frame against the wall, watching the glass shatter into 1,000 pieces. The sound of the impact brought a moment of relief from the pain she felt, but soon silence returned to dominate her small apartment. Sarah walked to the kitchen, her hands still shaking, and opened the bottle of wine she'd been saving for special occasions. How ironic. She poured herself a generous glass and returned to the living room, sinking into the sofa. Her cell phone vibrated on the coffee table. It was Melissa. She probably already knew about the argument. Eleanor always ran to tell her favorite daughter every detail of her fights with Sarah. She ignored the call. Minutes later, her phone vibrated again, this time with a text message. "Sarah, Mom told me what happened. I know you're upset, but she didn't mean to say that. Please call me." Sarah laughed bitterly. Of course, Melissa would be trying to smooth things over. Always the diplomat, always the sensible one, always the better one. Looking at the torn photo on the floor, among the shards of glass, Sarah felt a sudden determination grow inside her. She was tired of being the inadequate daughter, tired of being constantly compared, tired of feeling that no matter how hard she tried, she would never be enough. She picked up her phone and typed a response to Melissa. This time was different. "I won't pretend everything is okay. I need to understand why she's always treated me this way." After sending the message, Sarah opened her laptop and began searching for plane tickets. She needed to go home, to the small town where she grew up, to confront her mother and understand, once and for all, the roots of that contempt. While browsing the airline website, an email notification appeared on her screen. It was from Thomas, her father. The subject simply said, "Don't come now." Sarah frowned, confused. How did he know about her plans? She opened the email and read the short message. "Dear Sarah, your mother told me about the argument. I know you're hurt, but it's not a good time to come home. Your mother isn't well. Wait a few weeks. We'll talk soon. With love, Dad." That was strange. Thomas had never interfered in the fights between her and Eleanor. He always kept his distance, as if he were merely an observer of the dysfunctional dynamic between mother and daughters. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. There was something else going on, something her father wasn't telling her. The urgency in his message was palpable. Determined, she bought a ticket for the next day. She wasn't going to wait anymore, wasn't going to postpone. She needed answers. While packing a small suitcase, Sarah found, at the bottom of a drawer, a small diary from her adolescence. She sat on the edge of the bed and began to flip through it. Each page was a record of pain, of frustrated attempts to please Eleanor, of constant comparisons with Melissa. On one of the pages, she had written, Sometimes I think Mom hates me, as if I had done something terrible before I was even born. Sarah closed the diary, feeling a weight in her chest. Those words written so many years ago still resonated with a painful truth. Her phone vibrated again. It was a message from an unknown number. "Sarah, this is Margaret, your mother's friend. I heard you had an argument. There's something you need to know, something Eleanor never had the courage to tell you. Meet me when you get to town. Don't tell anyone about this message." Sarah stood motionless, looking at her phone. Who was Margaret? And what did she know that was so important? That night, Sarah could barely sleep. Her mother's words, her father's email, Margaret's mysterious message, everything mixed in her mind, forming a puzzle she couldn't decipher. One thing was certain. She was about to discover a secret that could change everything she knew about her family. And, for the first time in a long time, Sarah wasn't sure if she was prepared for the truth. The sun came through the slats of the blinds when Lauren gave up trying to sleep. She got up and walked to the small kitchen of her apartment, making coffee more out of habit than necessity. The exhaustion she felt was of a kind that no caffeine could cure. As the water boiled, Lauren observed her distorted reflection in the kettle. At 32, she still maintained many of the characteristics she had inherited from her father. The same deep brown eyes, the same determined line of the chin. From Diane, Lauren had inherited only the wavy red hair, though she kept it shorter than her mother would ever approve. The thought made her smile bitterly. Even in the simplest choices, like hair length, Lauren managed to disappoint her mother. It hadn't always been that way. Lauren could remember, albeit vaguely, a time when Diane would smile when she saw her, when she would proudly hold her hand, taking her to kindergarten. But something had changed when Rebecca was born, 3 years after her. It was as if all of Diane's love had been transferred to the younger daughter, leaving Lauren with only crumbs of affection. With the coffee cup in her hands, Lauren sat at the small table near the window. Her apartment in the downtown area wasn't large or luxurious, but it was her sanctuary. After working as an assistant editor for 7 years, she was finally starting to feel established. She had friends, a stable job, and plans for the future. Plans that, until yesterday, included returning to university to finish her literature degree. Her cell phone vibrated again. It was a message from Julia, her best friend since college. "I saw you bought an urgent ticket. Is everything okay? Need help with anything?" Lauren smiled. Julia worked at the travel agency and always kept an eye on her friends' reservations. She was the type of person who showed up with food when you were sick, even without being called. "I'm going back home. Had a bad fight with my mother. I'll tell you when I get back," Lauren replied. Almost instantly, the phone rang. It was Julia. "Don't come at me with vague messages. What happened?" Julia's warm and concerned voice brought a little comfort. Lauren took a deep breath and told her about the argument, about Diane's cruel words, and about Evelyn's mysterious message. "Who the hell is this Evelyn?" Julia asked. "Honestly, I have no idea. My mother never mentioned anyone by that name. At least, not that I remember." "Lauren, this seems strange. Are you sure you want to go?" "I need to know the truth, Jules. I've spent my entire life trying to understand why my mother treats me this way." On the other end of the line, Julia sighed. "Okay, but promise you'll keep me informed. And if you need a rescue, just call me." After hanging up, Lauren finished packing her bag. She caught the afternoon flight, and, after 2 hours, landed at the small regional airport near her hometown. The taxi took just under 40 minutes to reach the residential area where she grew up. The neighborhood remained practically the same. Well-kept houses with immaculate gardens, children playing on the sidewalks, an atmosphere of suburban tranquility that always seemed suffocating to Lauren. She asked the driver to stop 2 blocks from her parents' house. She needed a moment to gather courage. As she walked slowly, carrying her suitcase, Lauren relived memories of her childhood. There was the park where she used to hide when Rebecca received praise from teachers and neighbors. Just ahead, the town library where she spent hours reading, finding in the words of others the escape she needed from her own reality. Turning the corner, Lauren stopped abruptly. Parked in front of her parents' house was Rebecca's elegant BMW. Her hands began to sweat. Of course, Rebecca would be there. Diane had probably called her to form a united front against the problematic daughter. Lauren was about to turn around when she noticed movement on the porch. It was Robert, her father, sitting alone in the old rocking chair. He hadn't seen her yet. Robert had always been a complex figure in Lauren's life. He wasn't cruel like Diane, but his passivity in the face of the unequal treatment between the daughters had been, in its way, equally painful. Lauren knew he loved her, but never understood why he didn't defend her more actively. With a sigh, Lauren squared her shoulders and continued walking. If she was going to face this situation, better to do it now. Seeing her approach, Robert quickly stood up, an expression of concern crossing his face. "Lauren, didn't you get my email?" He descended the few steps from the porch, coming toward her. "I got it, Dad, but I needed to come." Robert looked older than the last times Lauren had seen him, his hair completely gray, new wrinkles around his eyes. He hesitated for a moment before hugging her, a short and almost formal embrace. "Your mother is resting now, and Rebecca just arrived with the kids," he said, taking Lauren's suitcase. "Let's go in through the back. I want to talk to you first." Robert's conspiratorial tone increased Lauren's anxiety. Something was definitely wrong. They entered through the kitchen door. The house was quiet, except for distant sounds of children's voices coming from the living room. The familiar smell of lavender and cinnamon, the scent Diane used to clean the house, brought an unwanted wave of nostalgia. Robert motioned Lauren to the kitchen table and served 2 cups of coffee. "Your mother had a breakdown yesterday, after the argument with you," he finally said, in a low voice. "The doctor came and prescribed sedatives. She's sleeping now." Lauren felt a pang of guilt, immediately followed by frustration. "Dad, I didn't come here to cause more problems, but after what she said, I need to understand why she's always treated me this way." Robert looked at his cup for a long moment. "There are things you don't know, Lauren. Complicated things." "What things? Why all the mystery?" Before Robert could answer, the kitchen door opened and Rebecca entered. Unlike Lauren, Rebecca was the perfect image of Diane. Tall, elegant, with long blonde hair perfectly arranged. Her blue eyes, the same as Diane's, widened upon seeing her sister. "Lauren, we weren't expecting you today." The 2 sisters stared at each other for a tense moment. Despite all the comparisons and the rivalry forced by Diane, Lauren and Rebecca didn't hate each other. In fact, as children, they had been close. It was Diane's constant interference that had poisoned their relationship over the years. "I came to talk to Mom," Lauren said simply. "She's in no condition," Rebecca replied, immediately assuming a protective stance. "What happened yesterday wasn't normal, Lauren. She's really shaken." "And I'm not?" Lauren felt her voice rise slightly. "After what she said to me?" Robert placed a hand on Lauren's arm in a placating gesture. "Girls, please, no arguments now." Lauren took a deep breath, trying to control herself. She hadn't come all this way to fight with Rebecca. She wasn't the problem. "Lauren!" 2 childish voices sounded from the door, and Lauren's niece and nephew, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Nathan, ran to hug her. Despite the tension of the moment, Lauren couldn't help a genuine smile. She loved these children, who fortunately seemed immune to their grandmother's poison. "Hello, little ones. How you've grown since last time." In the middle of that warm embrace, Lauren felt her cell phone vibrate in her pocket. It was a message from the same unknown number. "Heard you arrived. Can we meet at the cafe on Main Street at 5 p.m.? Come alone. Evelyn." Lauren looked at the wall clock. It was less than an hour away. She looked up and met Rebecca's suspicious gaze. "Everything okay?" asked her sister. "Yes, just need to take care of something in town. I'll be back soon." The upcoming meeting with the mysterious Evelyn could finally bring the answers Lauren had been searching for so long. But as she prepared to leave again, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to open Pandora's box, and that nothing in her family would be the same after this. The Main Street Cafe was a cozy establishment that had existed in town for at least 3 decades. Lauren remembered coming here with her father on Sundays when she was little. It was one of the few rituals she had with Robert alone, without Diane or Rebecca present. During these quiet mornings, she could feel truly loved, without comparisons or criticism. Now, sitting at a table in the back of the cafe, Lauren anxiously watched the door each time the bell above it rang. Her fingers drummed nervously on the table as she checked the clock for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. It was already 10 minutes past 5. "More coffee, dear?" asked an elderly waitress Lauren didn't recognize. "Yes, please." As the waitress filled her cup, the cafe door opened again. A woman of about 60 entered, looking around cautiously. She had gray hair cut in a practical style and dressed with simple elegance. Her eyes, bright and penetrating, found Lauren's almost immediately. The woman walked directly to Lauren's table. "You must be Lauren," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Evelyn Parker." Lauren shook the offered hand, feeling a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. "How did you know it was me?" A sad smile appeared on Evelyn's face. "You have his eyes," she said, sitting across from Lauren. "His? You mean my father's?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She ordered coffee from the waitress and waited until they were alone again before speaking. "Lauren, what I'm going to tell you is delicate and will change your perception of many things. Are you sure you want to know?" Lauren's heart raced. "I've spent my entire life feeling that something was wrong, that a piece of the puzzle was missing. Any truth is better than this uncertainty." Evelyn nodded, understanding. "I knew your mother a long time ago, even before you were born. We worked together at the regional hospital. I was a nurse. She was an administrative receptionist. That's also where she met your... Robert." Lauren noticed Evelyn's hesitation when mentioning her father, but didn't interrupt. Diane and Robert had been engaged for a short time when it happened. Evelyn continued, her voice lowering slightly. "Your mother had a brief involvement with someone at the hospital, a doctor named Daniel Mitchell." Lauren felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you saying?" "A month after this involvement, Diane discovered she was pregnant. She and Robert hadn't yet. Well, she knew the baby couldn't be his." Lauren's world seemed to stop. Evelyn's words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't fully process them. "You're telling me Robert isn't my biological father?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Diane told Robert the truth before the wedding. He decided to stay with her and raise the child. You, as his own daughter. They got married quickly, and, a few months later, you were born." Lauren felt as if the air had been ripped from her lungs. Her mind went back to the phrase she had written in her teenage diary, "As if I had done something terrible before I was even born." "So, that's why," she whispered. "She hates me because I'm living proof of her betrayal." "Diane never knew how to handle guilt or shame well," Evelyn said gently, "and living daily with the reminder of her mistake. I'm not justifying how she treated you, Lauren. Nothing justifies that. But perhaps it helps you understand. And this man, Daniel Mitchell, does he know about me?" "No. He was transferred to another hospital shortly after. Diane never told him. In fact, she made everyone promise to keep the secret, including me." Lauren looked at Evelyn, confused. "Then why are you telling me this now?" Evelyn sighed deeply, her expression softening. "Because you deserve to know the truth, and because—" She hesitated for a moment. "Daniel is back in town. He recently retired and returned to care for his elderly mother. Diane found out about this 2 weeks ago and has been increasingly anxious since then. I think her fear that the truth might come to light is affecting how she treats you, making her even more defensive and cruel." Lauren felt hot tears running down her cheeks. Her entire life made sense now. Diane's contempt, Robert's protective behavior, the obvious preference for Rebecca. "Does Robert really love me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "More than you can imagine," Evelyn smiled gently. "He fought for you from the beginning. Diane wanted to give you up for adoption, but Robert refused. He insisted that you were his daughter in all the ways that mattered." These words brought a new wave of emotion to Lauren. Robert, the quiet and reserved man who had always seemed so passive, had been her true defender all along. "There's one more thing you should know," said Evelyn, opening her purse. She took out a yellowed envelope. "Robert gave this to me many years ago, asking me to keep it. He said that one day you might need it." Lauren took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a small key and a piece of paper with an address written on it. "What is this?" "A safety deposit box at the town bank. Robert opened it in your name when you were just 1 year old. I don't know what's in there, but he wanted you to have access when the time was right." Lauren carefully put the envelope in her purse, her mind spinning with all the new information. She had so many questions, but one stood out above the others. "Do you know where I can find this Daniel Mitchell?" Evelyn's look turned serious. "Are you sure you want to do this? It could complicate things even more." "I need to at least see him," Lauren insisted. "Understand where I come from." After a moment of hesitation, Evelyn wrote an address on a napkin. "He lives with his mother in the north area of town. It's a yellow house with a white fence." Lauren and Evelyn talked for a few more minutes. The retired nurse told stories about the hospital, about how Diane was, before all this, an ambitious young woman full of dreams. It was difficult for Lauren to imagine her mother like that, so different from the bitter woman she knew. As they said goodbye at the cafe door, Evelyn hugged Lauren firmly. "Whatever you decide to do with this information, remember, none of this is your fault." Lauren nodded, thanking her, and watched Evelyn walk away. Alone on the sidewalk, she checked her phone. There were 5 missed calls from Rebecca, and a message from Robert asking where she was. Instead of responding, Lauren began walking toward the bank. It was still open for another 30 minutes. She felt an urgency to discover what Robert had kept for her all these years. The bank manager received her with professional formality. After checking her documents and the key, he led her to the safe deposit box area. "This one was opened a long time ago," he commented. "Rare to see such old boxes still active." Lauren was left alone in a small room with the box in front of her. With trembling hands, she inserted the key and turned it. Inside was a metal box, old but well preserved. Opening the box, Lauren first found a letter, the name Lauren, written on the front in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. Under the letter was a small collection of objects: a baby bracelet with her name engraved, a lock of hair tied with a ribbon, some photos of her as a baby, each carefully dated on the back, and a notebook. Lauren opened the letter first. "My dear Lauren, if you are reading this, it means you have finally discovered the truth about your birth. I want you to know, first and foremost, that you have always been and always will be my daughter. The love I feel for you transcends biological ties. I kept these items for you as proof of how much you were loved from day one. Every moment of your life has been precious to me. The notebook contains notes I made during your first year, your smiles, your first words, each small achievement. I did this because I feared that one day you might question your place in my life. Don't blame your mother completely. Diane carries a heavy burden of guilt and shame that she has never been able to overcome. I tried for years to help her see the wonderful daughter we have, but some wounds are difficult to heal. When you're ready, I'm here to talk. I always have been. With all my love, your father, Robert." Lauren couldn't contain the tears that now flowed freely. 32 years of doubts and insecurities seemed to crumble before that simple truth. She had always been loved, at least by Robert. She leafed through the notebook, reading Robert's meticulous accounts of her first steps, her first words, her little baby habits. Each page was a testimony of love. When she finally left the bank, the sun was already setting. Lauren walked slowly, with no defined direction, absorbing everything she had discovered. Her phone rang again. It was Rebecca. This time, Lauren answered. "Lauren, where are you? We're all worried." "I'm fine, Becca," Lauren replied, using her sister's childhood nickname. "I just needed some time to think." "Mom woke up and is asking for you," said Rebecca, her voice now softer. "I think she wants to apologize." Lauren doubted that. Diane never apologized, at least not sincerely. "I'll be back soon," Lauren said, hanging up before Rebecca could ask more. Standing at the corner, Lauren looked at the paper with Daniel Mitchell's address. Part of her wanted to go there immediately, to see the man whose blood ran in her veins, but another part hesitated. It would be a shock for him, and she hadn't yet decided what she would say. The truth had a weight she hadn't anticipated. Now, Lauren had to decide what to do with it. Confront Diane, meet Daniel, or perhaps just have an honest conversation with Robert for the first time. The sky was darkening quickly, and Lauren knew she needed to return to her parents' house. A storm was approaching, both in the gray sky above and in the family drama that was about to unfold. With the metal box secure in her purse, Lauren began walking back, each step taking her closer to a confrontation that could finally free the family from the secrets that had imprisoned them for decades. The rain started to fall when Lauren was just 2 blocks away from her parents' house. Heavy, cold drops soaked her face, blending with the tears that still occasionally escaped. There was something cathartic about that rain, as if the sky itself were sharing in her emotional storm. As she turned the corner, Lauren spotted a familiar car parked near the house, the old Ford that belonged to Jacob, her high school ex-boyfriend, and still a close friend. What was he doing there? As she approached the house, the front door opened and Jacob stepped out onto the porch. Even from a distance and through the rain, she immediately recognized his broad shoulders and characteristic walk. Jacob had stayed in town after high school, becoming a literature teacher at the local school. The same path Lauren had started down before dropping out of college and moving away. "Lauren!" he called, hurrying down the porch steps with an umbrella in hand. Within seconds, he was by her side, shielding her from the rain. "Rebecca called me, worried. I came to see if I could help find you." Jacob's familiar face, with his kind brown eyes and the warm smile she'd known since her teenage years, brought a wave of unexpected comfort. They had ended their relationship amicably when Lauren decided to leave, knowing they needed to follow different paths, but they'd never lost their affection and friendship. "Jacob," she murmured, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few days. "Everything's falling apart." Without hesitation, Jacob wrapped her in a protective hug, the umbrella precariously balanced above them. "Let's get out of this rain first," he said gently. "My car's just over here." Instead of taking her directly to her parents' house, Jacob drove to a small diner on the edge of town. It was a no-frills spot they used to frequent in high school, known for serving the best hot chocolate around. Since it was late afternoon on a rainy day, the place was nearly empty. "2 specials, please, Martha," Jacob said to the owner, who recognized them immediately, smiling nostalgically at the couple who used to sit in the corner booth years ago. Seated across from each other, with steaming mugs of hot chocolate between them, Lauren felt a strange calm settle over her. It was as if they'd stepped into a time bubble, a place where family problems and recent revelations couldn't reach her. "So," Jacob finally said, after giving Lauren a few moments of silence, "want to tell me what's going on?" Lauren hesitated. Telling Jacob would mean making everything more real. But on the other hand, he had always been her safe harbor, a person she could be completely honest with. "I found out Robert isn't my biological father," she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob didn't show shock or disbelief, just nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "How did you find out?" Lauren told him about the argument with Diane, the mysterious message from Evelyn, and everything she had learned over the past few hours. Jacob listened attentively, without interrupting, offering only small gestures of understanding. "That explains a lot," he said when she finished. "I always thought it was strange how your mom treated you and Rebecca so differently." Lauren took a sip of her hot chocolate. grateful for the warm sensation in her throat. The most surprising part is that Robert, all this time, he knew. He chose me, Jacob. He decided to be my father even though we didn't share blood. That doesn't surprise me one bit, Jacob said with a soft smile. Robert always looked at you with such pride. Remember when you won that state writing contest? The way he carried that certificate around for weeks, showing it to anyone who'd look. The memory brought a smile to Lauren's face. Robert had been her biggest supporter when she showed a talent for writing. He was the one who took her to her first book fair, who stayed up late helping her revise school essays. Now I understand why he never confronted Diane directly, Lauren reflected. He probably feared she might reveal the truth if pushed too hard. Or maybe he just accepted it as part of the deal they made, Jacob suggested. He'd stay with both of you, but he'd have to accept the way Diane handled things. Lauren let out a deep sigh. What do I do now, Jacob? Do I confront my mom? Do I try to find this Daniel Mitchell guy? Do I pretend I never found any of this out? Jacob reached across the table, gently holding her hand. What do you want to do, Lauren? This is your story, your truth. You have the right to decide how to deal with it. For the first time since receiving Evelyn's message, Lauren felt a moment of clarity. I want to talk to Robert first, she said with determination. Alone. Before I confront Diane or meet Daniel, I need to thank the man who truly was my father all these years. Jacob smiled, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. That sounds like a good place to start. They stayed at the diner a while longer, chatting about lighter things. Jacob's life as a teacher, the funny students he had, the books Lauren had edited over the years. It was comforting, that brief moment of normalcy amid the chaos. By the time they left, the rain had turned into a light drizzle. The air was fresh and clean, carrying that earthy scent that always followed a storm. I can take you anywhere, Jacob offered once they were in the car. Lauren thought for a moment. There's somewhere I'd like to go before heading home. She gave him directions, and Jacob drove in silence, respecting her need to reflect. 15 minutes later, they parked in front of a small lake on the outskirts of town. It was a special place for Lauren, one she'd often visited in her teens when she needed to escape the tension at home. Want me to wait in the car? Jacob asked. Lauren shook her head. No, come with me. I just need a few minutes here. They walked to the edge of the lake, where an old wooden bench offered a view of the water. The clouds were starting to break, and the last rays of the setting sun reflected on the lake's surface, creating a spectacle of golden and orange hues. I used to come here to write, Lauren said, sitting on the bench, or just to breathe when things got tough at home. Jacob sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I remember you brought me here once. It was after that big fight with your mom on your 17th birthday. Lauren remembered that day with painful clarity. Diane had ruined her party, criticizing her in front of all the guests. She'd run off, and Jacob had found her here hours later, her eyes swollen from crying. You always knew where to find me, she smiled at him. Some things never change, he returned the smile. Sitting there, watching the sunset reflected on the water, Lauren felt a strange peace settle in her heart. The truth she'd uncovered was painful, but also freeing. She finally understood Diane's behavior, and more importantly, she knew that Robert, her father in every way that mattered, had loved her deeply. You know what's funny? He said after a long silence. I spent so much time feeling rejected, like something was fundamentally wrong with me. And now I find out the problem was never me. It was the secrets and guilt my mom carried. Jacob nodded sympathetically. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones most hurt inside. Lauren pulled from her bag the metal box Robert had kept for her. She opened it again, looking at each carefully preserved item, tangible proof of her father's love. She ran her fingers over the tiny hospital bracelet with her name on it, imagining Robert placing it on her newborn wrist, already determined to love her unconditionally. He kept all this for 32 years, she murmured, voice thick with emotion, waiting for the day I'd learn the truth. Robert was always a long-term thinker, Jacob said. He knew that day would come, eventually. Lauren carefully closed the box and placed it back in her bag. The sky now displayed deep purples and indigos, with the first stars beginning to appear. "I'm ready to go back," she announced, standing up from the bench. On the drive back to her parents' house, Lauren mentally rehearsed what she would say to Robert. There was no anger or blame in her thoughts, only gratitude and a deep desire to start a new, honest relationship with the man who had chosen to be her father. When they arrived, Jacob parked the car a short distance from the house. "Want me to go in with you?" he offered. Lauren shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone. But thank you, Jacob, for everything." "I'll be around if you need me," he assured her. "Just call." Lauren leaned in and kissed Jacob's cheek gently, a gesture of gratitude for the friend who had always been there during her hardest moments. Stepping out of the car, she walked with steady steps toward the house. The living room lights were on, and she could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Her family, complicated, imperfect, built on secrets and lies, but still her family. Before climbing the porch steps, Lauren looked up one last time at the night sky, now filled with stars. She felt small beneath that vastness, but also strangely empowered. Whatever the outcome of the confrontation ahead, she would face it with the truth on her side. And for the first time in a long while, Lauren felt hope. Hope for healing, for understanding, and maybe even for forgiveness. With that renewed strength in her heart, she climbed the steps and opened the door, ready to face her past and claim her future. The house was eerily quiet when Lauren walked in. In the living room, she found only Robert, sitting alone in the worn leather armchair that had always been his favorite spot. A single lamp lit the space, casting long shadows across the walls. He looked up from the book he was reading and, for a moment, simply stared at her, as if trying to gauge how much she already knew. "Where are Rebecca and the kids?" Lauren asked, gently closing the door behind her. "She took them to a hotel. Thought it was best after your mother and I had a difficult conversation." Robert closed the book and set it on the side table. "Your mom's upstairs. She took a sedative a few hours ago." Lauren took a few hesitant steps toward him, feeling as though she was crossing not just the room, but decades of silence and secrets. "I spoke to Evelyn Parker today," she said, watching Robert closely. A mix of recognition and resignation crossed his face. He nodded slowly. "I figured that day would come eventually. Why didn't you ever tell me?" The question came out softer than Lauren had expected, without the accusation it could have carried. Robert gestured to the couch across from his chair. "Sit down, Lauren, please." She did, placing her bag beside her. Carefully, she pulled out the metal box and placed it on the coffee table between them. "I found this," she said simply. Robert looked at the box with an expression that blended surprise and relief. "So, Evelyn kept it after all," he murmured. "After all these years." "Why, Dad," Lauren pressed, the word Dad now carrying a new weight, a conscious choice. "Why keep this secret for so long?" Robert let out a deep sigh, running a hand through his graying hair. "At first, it was to protect you. A child shouldn't have to carry the weight of that kind of truth." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Later, it was because of the promise I made to your mother. We agreed never to speak of it, to move forward as if you were biologically mine. But I'm not," Lauren said, the words still strange in her mouth. "Not by blood," Robert agreed, leaning forward, "but in every other way. You are my daughter, Lauren. From the first moment I held you, when you were just minutes old, I knew nothing else mattered but that you were mine to love and protect." His words warmed Lauren's heart, but there were still questions she needed answered. The way Mom treated me all these years, the constant comparisons to Rebecca, the obvious favoritism. Robert lowered his gaze, guilt etched deeply in his expression. "I tried to step in so many times, but every time I confronted Diane about how she treated you, things only got worse. She couldn't seem to separate you from the guilt she felt. He looked up again, eyes shimmering with emotion. I should have done more. I know that now. I tried to make up for it in the little moments we had together, but it was never enough, was it? Lauren felt tears welling up, but held them back. You know what's strange? Despite everything, I always felt you loved me. Even when you didn't speak up, there was something in the way you looked at me, like you wanted to say so much more than you could ever put into words. Robert reached across the table, and Lauren took his hand firmly. You were my greatest joy, Lauren. Watching you grow, discovering your passion for literature, your sensitivity with words. I saw so much of myself in you. No matter what biology says. Lauren smiled through the tears now freely streaming down her face. I read your letter, she said, the one in the box, and I saw the notes you wrote about me when I was a baby. I wanted you to have something real to hold on to when you found out the truth, Robert said, squeezing her hand. Something to show that from the very beginning, you were loved, deeply loved. Lauren was about to reply when they heard footsteps coming down the stairs. They both looked up to see Diane standing at the entrance to the room. She looked pale and worn, dark circles under her eyes, but there was something in her posture. Rigidity, a kind of resolve. I see you finally found out, Diane said, her voice strangely calm. Lauren released Robert's hand and stood up, suddenly feeling vulnerable. Yes, she said simply. And now what? You've come to confront me? To accuse me? Diane's voice held that familiar defensive edge, but there was something else, too. Exhaustion. Maybe even defeat. No, Lauren said, surprising even herself. I came to understand. Diane looked momentarily caught off guard. She stepped further into the room, but kept her distance, as if afraid to get too close. There's not much to understand. I made a mistake a long time ago. I tried to fix it the best way I could. By treating me like I was the embodiment of that mistake, Lauren couldn't keep the hurt from her voice. By making me feel like I'd never be good enough? You don't understand. Diane shook her head. Every time I looked at you, I was reminded of the worst decision of my life, of the moment I almost lost everything that mattered. Robert stood too, as if ready to intervene, but Diane raised a hand to stop him. Let me finish, Robert. She deserves to hear it. Diane took a deep breath before continuing. It wasn't fair to you, Lauren. I know that, but I couldn't get past the guilt. And then Rebecca came along, and she looked so much like me, so undeniably our daughter. It was easier to connect with her. That doesn't excuse, Lauren began, but Diane interrupted. I'm not trying to excuse. I'm trying to explain. She ran a trembling hand over her face. I was never good at handling mistakes, Lauren, especially my own. A heavy silence fell over the room. Lauren looked at Robert, who was watching Diane with a complicated expression. Concern, but also a kind of detachment, as if he too was worn out from decades of unresolved tension. I want to meet Daniel Mitchell, Lauren said at last. Diane's reaction was immediate and visceral. The color drained from her face, and she grabbed the back of a nearby chair to steady herself. No, she whispered. You can't. Why not? Lauren challenged. I have the right to meet my biological father. He's not your father. Diane's voice rose. Robert is your father. Daniel means nothing. To you, maybe. But to me, he's part of my story. Part of who I am. Lauren, Robert said gently. Maybe we should all take some time to... There's something you're not telling me, Lauren interrupted, watching them both carefully. Diane's paleness, the worried glance Robert gave her, there was more to this. What is it? Neither of them answered right away. It was Diane who finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Daniel doesn't know about you. Evelyn already told me that, Lauren said, but I still have the right. It's more than that, Diane continued, now sounding strangely resigned. Daniel Mitchell. He married my sister Claire 3 years after you were born. The revelation hit Lauren like lightning. Aunt Claire, the one who rarely visited, who always seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings. Diane only had one sister, 10 years younger, who lived out of state. Aunt Claire, Is married to my biological father? Lauren could barely process it. And does she know? About me? Diane shook her head. No one in the family knows. Just the three of us. Claire met Daniel when he returned to work at the hospital years later. It was coincidence, or maybe cruel fate. Lauren's mind reeled. This made everything infinitely more complicated. It wasn't just about her and a stranger who shared her DNA. There was an entire web of family relationships at risk. Do they have kids? She asked, suddenly realizing the implications. 2, Robert said. Your cousins Jason and Megan. Lauren's legs gave out, and she sat back down on the couch. Jason and Megan, the cousins she saw occasionally at Christmas and weddings. They were actually her half-siblings. The revelation was almost absurd in its complexity. Why is he back in town now? She asked, recalling what Evelyn had said. His mother is dying, Diane explained. Claire will be with him for a few weeks, but then she'll return home with the kids. They're adults now, of course, but we still call them kids. Daniel's staying to care for his mom until the end. It was then Lauren understood why Diane had been so unraveled the past few days, why the confrontation had been so intense. It wasn't just fear of Lauren discovering the truth about her birth, but the entire tangled web of secrets and lies holding up the fragile structure of their extended family. I need to process all this, Lauren said, rubbing her face with her hands. Lauren, Diane said, finally stepping closer and hesitantly sitting beside her. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please think about the consequences before reaching out to Daniel. Claire doesn't know any of this. You'd destroy not just her marriage, but also the image Jason and Megan have of their father. It was strange hearing Diane speak with genuine concern for the impact on others. Lauren looked at her mother, seeing her truly for the first time, not as the cold, critical figure who dominated her childhood, but as a woman haunted by past choices, living in constant fear that the truth would come out. I don't know what I'll do, Lauren admitted. I need time. Robert returned to his armchair, looking drained by the weight of the moment. Take all the time you need, he said gently. No one else will find out, unless you decide to tell them. Lauren looked between them. Robert, the man who had chosen to be her father in every way that mattered, and Diane, the woman whose actions and secrets had shaped her life in ways she was only beginning to understand. I want to see a picture of him, Lauren said suddenly. Of Daniel. I have at least that right. Diane closed her eyes for a moment, as if summoning strength, then nodded. In my room, second drawer of the dresser, there's a box of old hospital photos. There's one of the medical staff back then. He's in it. Robert looked at Diane in surprise. You kept that all these years? Some things you just can't throw away, no matter how much you want to, Diane replied, her voice full of exhaustion. Lauren climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the weight of each step. Her parents' bedroom, a place she rarely entered, even as a child, felt like foreign territory. She found the box easily, and, sitting on the edge of the bed her parents had shared for over 3 decades, began to sift through the photographs. The staff photo was near the bottom, a formal image of about 20 people in hospital uniforms, professional smiles on their faces. Her eyes automatically sought Diane, young, with darker hair, but the same graceful posture. Next to her was a tall man with glasses, a kind smile, and Lauren froze, heart racing. The same eyes. She had his eyes, not just the color, but the shape, the expression. She had always wondered where those eyes came from, so different from Robert's or Diane's. Now she knew. With trembling hands, she slipped the photo into her pocket. This small physical connection to the man she had never met, but whose genes she carried, felt too precious to leave behind. When she returned to the living room, she found Robert and Diane sitting side by side on the couch, speaking in low voices. They stopped when they saw her. I found it, Lauren said simply. And? Diane asked, tension thick in her voice. I have his eyes. A heavy silence followed. Then, to Lauren's surprise, Diane began to cry. Not quiet, restrained tears, but full sobs that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. "Diane," Robert said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders, looking at Lauren with an apologetic expression. "It's okay," Lauren said, feeling a strange reversal of roles. Suddenly, she was the one who had to be strong as her mother unraveled. "I'm sorry," Diane sobbed, the words barely understandable. "I'm so sorry for everything, Lauren. For every moment I made you feel like you weren't enough." Lauren sat frozen, unable to respond. In 32 years, she had never heard her mother apologize like this, openly, vulnerably, without defenses. "It wasn't your fault you were born," Diane continued, wiping her tears with trembling hands. "It was my choice, my mistake. And instead of taking responsibility, I punished you for existing. What kind of mother, what kind of person does that?" Robert looked at Lauren, his eyes pleading for understanding. It was clear even he had never seen Diane like this. Slowly, Lauren stepped closer and knelt in front of her mother. There was no easy forgiveness for decades of emotional rejection, but there was something new unfolding between them, a possibility, perhaps, of a different kind of relationship. "We need time," Lauren said softly, "all of us, to process, to understand what this means for our family." Diane nodded, taking a deep breath to calm herself. "What will you do about Daniel?" Robert asked, concern clear in his voice. Lauren touched the photo in her pocket, thinking of the man who never knew he had a daughter. The tangled mess of relationships a single revelation could unravel. "I don't know yet," she said honestly, "but whatever I decide, you'll be the first to know." That night, Lauren slept in her old bedroom, the familiar objects of her teenage years around her like ghosts from a life that now felt like someone else's. Before bed, she sent a message to Jacob. "Thank you for today. We need to talk tomorrow. There's more to this story than I ever imagined." She fell asleep with Daniel's photo under her pillow, a secret within a secret, while the moon cast dancing shadows through the window of her childhood, where she had spent so many nights wondering why she was never enough in her mother's eyes. Tomorrow would bring new choices, new possible paths. For now, Lauren allowed herself to simply exist in the space between what she had always believed to be true and what actually was. A space full of infinite possibilities and irreversible change. Lauren woke to the sound of raised voices coming from downstairs. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, she thought she was a teenager again, listening to yet another of her parents' frequent arguments. Then the reality of the previous night hit her like a wave. The revelations, the confessions, the photo of Daniel Mitchell still tucked beneath her pillow. She glanced at the clock on her nightstand. 7:35 a.m. Who could be arguing this early? She got up quickly, slipped on the old robe hanging behind the door, a forgotten item from when she'd moved out, and made her way quietly downstairs. The voices were coming from the kitchen. One of them was unmistakably Rebecca's. "How could you keep this from us for so long?" Her sister's voice trembled with indignation. "I have a right to know that my own sister is... Lauren froze in the hallway, her heart racing. How had Rebecca found out? Who told her? "Keep your voice down," came Diane's tense reply. "Lauren's still asleep upstairs. And now you care about her? After the way you treated her our whole lives?" Lauren had never heard Rebecca speak to Diane in that accusatory tone. Her sister had always been the obedient daughter, the peacemaker, the one who never directly challenged their parents. "Rebecca, please," Robert's tired voice intervened. "I know this is a shock, but we need to think about how to handle this as a family." "Family?" Rebecca let out a bitter laugh. "What family, Dad? One built on lies?" Lauren couldn't stay hidden any longer. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the kitchen. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her immediately. Rebecca stood by the sink, arms crossed defensively. Robert was seated at the table, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Diane hovered near the door to the garden, as if contemplating a quick escape. "Good morning," Lauren said, trying to keep her voice steady. Rebecca looked at her intensely, a storm of emotions crossing her face. Shock, confusion, hurt, and something else Lauren couldn't quite place. "Why didn't you tell me?" Rebecca asked, her voice quieter now but no less intense. "Last night, when you got here. Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "I was barely processing it myself," Lauren answered honestly. "How did you find out?" Rebecca glanced briefly at Diane before returning her gaze to Lauren. "I found Mom crying in the garden at 5 this morning. When I asked what happened, she shook her head. She just broke down and told me everything." Lauren looked at Diane in surprise. Her mother had always been the picture of composure and control. Seeing her fall apart twice in less than 24 hours was disorienting. "I found out yesterday," Lauren explained. "I'm still trying to understand what it all means." Rebecca stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. "My whole life," she said, her voice shaking, "I watched the way Mom treated you. I felt guilty for being the favorite, for getting the love she withheld from you. I tried to make up for it, be the perfect sister, the peacemaker. And all this time," she looked at their parents with a betrayed expression, "all this time, you were hiding something this huge." "Rebecca," Robert began, but she raised her hand to stop him. "No, Dad, I don't want explanations right now." He turned to Lauren. "And Daniel Mitchell? What are you going to do? Are you going to find him?" Lauren felt all their eyes on her, waiting for her answer. The truth was, she hadn't slept much, spending most of the night weighing her options and the gravity of each possible decision. "I haven't decided yet," she said honestly. "You need to think carefully," Rebecca said, her voice now heavy with concern. "He's married to Aunt Claire. He's our cousin's father. If you show up and tell him the truth—" "You think I haven't thought about that?" Lauren snapped, frustration rising. "That I don't understand the consequences? I spent my whole life not knowing why my own mother couldn't look me in the eye, why nothing I did was ever good enough. I have a right to know where I come from, to understand who I really am." A heavy silence followed her words. Lauren didn't usually raise her voice like that, and the intensity of her reaction surprised everyone in the room, including herself. "No one's denying your rights, sweetheart," Robert said gently, standing and moving closer to her. "We just want you to consider all the angles before you make a decision." Lauren felt tears begin to form, but held them back. "So what should I do? Keep pretending nothing's changed? Go back to my life and carry this secret too?" "I don't know the right answer," Robert admitted. "I just know that whatever you decide, I'll support you. I always have." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of the doorbell. Everyone looked at each other, confused. Who could it be this early? "I'll get it," Rebecca said, hurrying out of the kitchen, seemingly relieved for the interruption. Moments later, voices drifted in from the front hall, and then Rebecca returned to the kitchen, her face stricken with panic. "It's Aunt Claire," she whispered. Diane's face went completely pale. Robert gripped the edge of the table like he needed it to stay upright. "Claire? Here? Now?" Diane looked like she could barely get the words out. "She said she was passing through town and thought she'd stop by. I thought—" Rebecca glanced nervously at Lauren. "I thought it should be your decision whether to see her." Lauren felt the air leave the room. Claire, the woman who had unknowingly married her biological father, who lived in blissful ignorance of a truth that could shatter her marriage, her family. Lauren looked at Diane, then at Robert, hoping for guidance, but both looked just as lost as she felt. "Lauren," Diane said, her voice strangely calm now, "what do you want to do?" It was a surprising question coming from Diane, who had always dictated what Lauren should do, think, or feel. That small show of respect for her autonomy made Lauren pause. "I'll see her," she said finally. "I won't say anything, but I need to see her." Rebecca nodded and returned to the hall. Moments later, Claire entered the kitchen. A younger, softer version of Diane, with the same blonde hair, though cut shorter, and a warm smile rarely seen on her older sister. "Good morning, family," she chirped cheerfully, seemingly unaware of the tension in the room. Sorry for dropping by so early, but Daniel has an appointment with his mother's nurse at 9, so I thought I'd swing by quickly for some coffee. At the mention of Daniel, a chill ran down Lauren's spine. The man who shared her DNA was just a few miles away, probably getting ready to head out with this woman, his wife for decades, completely unaware of the ticking time bomb that threatened their lives. "Claire," Diane managed, forcing a smile. "What a nice surprise. How's your mother-in-law?" "Not well, unfortunately," Claire said, accepting the coffee cup Rebecca handed her. "The doctors say it's just a matter of weeks. Daniel's devastated, of course, but he's handling it well. He's always been so strong." Lauren couldn't take her eyes off Claire, instinctively searching for any signs that, on some level, her aunt might suspect something. But all she saw was genuine innocence. "And Lauren!" Claire finally seemed to register her presence. "How wonderful to see you too. I didn't know you were visiting your parents." "It was a last-minute decision," Lauren replied, surprised at how steady her voice was. Claire stepped forward and hugged her warmly. Lauren returned the hug stiffly, feeling like an imposter. This woman treated her like a niece, unaware she was, in fact, married to Lauren's biological father, and that her children were Lauren's half-siblings. "How are Jason and Megan?" Robert asked, clearly trying to steer the conversation into safer waters. "Wonderful!" Claire beamed. "Jason just got promoted at his tech company, and Megan's pregnant with her second. You should see how excited Daniel is to be a grandfather again. He's so great with kids. Always has been." Every innocent word from Claire felt like a knife to Lauren. The image of Daniel Mitchell as a loving grandfather, devoted father, faithful husband, all of it clashed painfully with his absence from her life, an absence he didn't even know existed. Lauren needed to get out of there. The air felt too heavy, thick with guilt and secrets. "Excuse me," she said abruptly, standing up. I need to grab something upstairs." Without waiting for a response, Lauren left the kitchen and retreated to her old bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to steady her shallow breathing. She pulled the photo of Daniel from beneath her pillow and studied it again, taking in every detail of the man she'd never met, but whose blood ran through her veins. A few minutes later, a soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Rebecca. "Can I come in?" Lauren nodded silently. Rebecca entered and closed the door behind her, sitting beside Lauren on the bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "That's him?" Rebecca finally asked, looking at the photo in Lauren's hands. "Yes." Rebecca studied the image for a moment. "You have his eyes," she said, echoing what Lauren herself had said the night before. "I know." Rebecca let out a long sigh. Aunt Claire's leaving. She could tell something was off, but Mom made up some story about Dad's work. Lauren nodded, relieved not to have to face Claire again, at least for now. "What are we going to do, Becca?" she asked, using her childhood nickname for her sister. "I don't know," Rebecca admitted, "but whatever you decide, I'm with you." The statement caught Lauren off guard. She looked at her sister, searching for signs of hesitation or doubt, but found only genuine support. Even if it means exposing the secret? Even if it could destroy Aunt Claire's marriage? Rebecca took Lauren's hand, squeezing it firmly. "I understand why you need answers, why you want to know your roots. I can't imagine what it's like to find out something like this." He paused. "But I also think about Jason and Megan, our cousins, their kids, the family they've built. It's so complicated, Lauren." "I know," Lauren whispered. "That's why I don't know what to do." Silence settled over them again, this time more contemplative than tense. "I have an idea," Rebecca said finally. "What if you met Daniel without telling him who you are? At least at first?" Lauren frowned, considering. "How?" Claire mentioned he spends mornings at the hospital with his mom. The rest of the day, he usually hangs out at a cafe near the town square, reading or working on his laptop. She said it's his way of coping, finding a bit of normalcy in all of this. Lauren felt her heart start to race. "You're suggesting I just show up there by chance? Why not? You could observe him first, See how you feel. Maybe even talk to him a bit, like strangers. No commitment, no big reveal. The suggestion was tempting. A way to satisfy part of her curiosity without triggering irreversible consequences. Still, Lauren hesitated. What if he notices something? Sees the resemblance? The eyes? Rebecca shrugged. People rarely notice those things unless they're looking for them. And even if he sees a resemblance, the last thing he's going to think is that you're his biological daughter. Lauren slipped the photo back into its hiding place, mulling over the idea. I'll think about it, she said finally, but I need a little more time. Of course, Rebecca said with a soft smile. There's no rush. Take all the time you need. When Rebecca left, Lauren picked up her phone and saw several unread messages from Jacob. The last one read, I'm worried. If you want to talk, I'll be at the park near the lake at 11. She checked the clock, almost 9:30. Quickly she texted back, I'll be there. She got dressed and headed downstairs, finding the house strangely quiet. A note on the kitchen table, written in Robert's elegant handwriting, said he and Diane had gone out to run some errands and would be back for lunch. Grateful not to face another confrontation just yet, Lauren stepped out the back door, deciding to walk to the park to clear her head. As she passed through the garden, she noticed the old swing where she and Rebecca used to play as kids. On impulse, she sat down and began to swing gently. So many memories in that garden, in that house, some painful, others precious, all now cast in a new light, seen through the lens of a truth freshly uncovered. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. This is Daniel Mitchell. Claire mentioned you're in town visiting your parents. I'd love to get to know her niece better. I'll be at Cafe Central at 2 p.m. if you'd like to join me for a coffee. Lauren nearly dropped the phone. How did Daniel have her number? Why was he reaching out now? After all these years, could he possibly know something? Then the most likely explanation hit her. Claire had probably mentioned her visit with Lauren, and, being a good wife, gave Daniel her niece's number for a casual family get-together. A coincidence, nothing more. But still, the timing was eerie. Just minutes after Rebecca suggested Lauren meet Daniel anonymously, fate seemed to offer the exact opportunity. Lauren stood up from the swing, a new resolve forming in her chest. She would meet Jacob at the park, share this latest twist, and decide how to handle Daniel's unexpected invitation. As she walked through the familiar streets of her childhood, Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that she was approaching a point of no return, a moment that would redefine her identity, her past, and her future, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. And despite the fear, there was also a strange sense of inevitability, as if every path in her life had been quietly leading to this moment, this imminent meeting with the man who, unknowingly, had given her life. The park was peaceful at that hour of the morning. A few mothers with strollers strolled along the shaded trails, and an elderly man was feeding ducks by the small lake. Lauren spotted Jacob sitting on a bench by the water, absorbed in a book. The familiarity of the scene brought a brief wave of comfort. How many times in high school had she found him exactly like this, lost in a story? Still getting lost between the pages? Lauren asked as she approached. Jacob looked up and smiled, closing the book. Some things never change. And it's good to have constants in life, don't you think? Lauren sat beside him, watching the concentric ripples that formed in the water as a duck dove beneath the surface. My life hasn't had anything constant in the past 24 hours, she said with a weary sigh. Jacob waited patiently as Lauren recounted everything that had happened since they parted the night before. The confrontation with her parents, the revelation that Daniel was married to her Aunt Claire, Claire's unexpected appearance that morning, and finally, Daniel's text message. Wow! Jacob let out a low whistle when she finished. That's intense. What are you going to do about his invitation? Lauren pulled out her phone and showed him the message, as if looking at it again might help her decide. Part of me wants to go, to meet him, even if he doesn't know who I really am. But another part is terrified. She ran her hand through her hair nervously. What if I can't hide how I feel? What if I look at him and start crying? Or worse, what if I decide to tell him everything? Jacob handed the phone back, thinking it over. You know you don't have to make this decision alone, right? Rebecca's clearly on your side now. And Robert, he's always been your real dad in every way that matters. I know, Lauren nodded. But finding out the truth opened something inside me, like a piece I didn't even know was missing. And now that I know it's out there, I can't just ignore it. Jacob looked at her with understanding. What do you really hope to find in this meeting with Daniel? The question caught Lauren off guard. What was she hoping for? Recognition? Connection? An explanation for parts of herself she'd never been able to understand? I guess I want to see if there's anything of him in me besides the eyes, she finally said. I want to hear his voice, watch his gestures, try to understand if some of the things that always made me different from my family come from him. Makes sense, Jacob agreed. But can I suggest something? Go in with an open mind, no expectations. If you go hoping to find all the answers, you'll probably be disappointed. Lauren smiled at him, grateful for his simple, grounded wisdom. And maybe I could come with you? Jacob offered cautiously. I can sit at another table, just to make sure you have backup if you need it. The offer touched Lauren deeply. Thank you. That would mean a lot. They spent a while longer in the park, discussing strategies for the meeting. Jacob suggested that Lauren come up with a cover story to explain her presence in town, in case Daniel asked about her background. She could talk about her work as an editor, but avoid getting too personal about her childhood or her relationship with Diane. At noon, Lauren returned to her parents' house to have lunch and get ready. She found Robert on the porch, drinking coffee alone. Diane's resting, he explained when Lauren asked. Claire's visit this morning shook her up. Lauren sat beside him, soothed by his quiet presence. I got a message from Daniel, she said softly. Claire must have given him my number. He wants to meet for coffee this afternoon. Robert visibly tensed, but kept his voice calm. And what have you decided? I'm going to meet him. Jacob will be there too, at a different table. I'm not going to tell him anything, just get to know him a little. Robert nodded slowly. I understand your need, Lauren. Just be careful. I always am, she said with a small smile. You taught me that. Robert placed his hand over hers, and they sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Dad, Lauren finally said, the word carrying more weight than ever. No matter what happens today, or what I find out about Daniel, you'll always be my father. You're the one who raised me, who loved me when it was hardest, who showed me what it means to be a good person. Robert's eyes shimmered with restrained tears. Thank you for saying that, sweetheart. It means more than you know. After lunch, Lauren spent some time carefully choosing what to wear. Not too formal, not too casual. She settled on a simple dark blue dress that matched her eyes, the eyes she'd inherited from Daniel. At 1:30 p.m., Jacob picked her up. Café Central was just 10 minutes away, in the heart of the small town. Nervous? He asked as he drove. Absolutely terrified, Lauren admitted with a shaky laugh. You're going to be fine. Just breathe, and remember, you can leave at any time if it gets to be too much. The cafe was charming and cozy, with dark wooden tables and large windows that let in soft, natural light. Lauren and Jacob arrived 5 minutes early. As planned, Jacob took a seat in the corner where he could watch the meeting discreetly, while Lauren sat at a more central table with a clear view of the door. The clock struck 2:00 p.m., exactly when the door opened and a man walked in. Lauren recognized him instantly from the photo. The same height, the same posture, though now with fully gray hair and a few more wrinkles. Daniel Mitchell was still an imposing figure in his early 60s, with a quiet intelligence and warmth in his expression. He scanned the room and, when his eyes met Lauren's, a smile of recognition crossed his face. Lauren's heart jumped. Did he somehow know? But then she realized he had likely seen photos of her before, maybe in family albums or online. You must be Lauren, he said as he approached. his voice startlingly similar to her own tone when reading aloud. "I'm Daniel, Claire's husband. I hope I'm not being too forward by inviting you like this." Lauren stood and shook his hand, trying to steady her own. "Not at all. It's a pleasure to meet you." They sat, and Daniel ordered coffee for both of them. For the first few minutes, conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Daniel asked about Lauren's work as an editor, and she shared a few funny stories about peculiar manuscripts she'd received. "Claire always speaks highly of you," Daniel said at one point. "She says you're the artist of the family, that you have an incredible gift with words." Lauren felt her neck flush. Aunt Claire's always been generous with her compliments. "Actually, I think I read something of yours once," Daniel added, catching her off guard. "A short story published in an anthology a few years ago? Something about a girl who finds a secret garden?" "The Memory Garden," Lauren confirmed, genuinely surprised. "That was my first published piece." "How did you—" "Claire showed it to me. She keeps clippings, publications, family news. She's proud of all of you. You, Rebecca, Jason, Megan." There was something in the way Daniel spoke of his wife, a tone of genuine affection and admiration, that made Lauren feel a pang of guilt for being there, concealing the truth. "I have a daughter about your age, you know?" Daniel continued, unaware of the impact of his words. "Well, not exactly my daughter. My stepdaughter, Olivia, Claire's daughter from her first marriage." Lauren nearly choked on her coffee. She had never heard of Olivia or Claire's previous marriage. "I didn't know Aunt Claire had been married before," she managed to say, keeping her voice even. Daniel nodded, a distant look in his eyes. "For a short time, when she was very young. The marriage didn't last, but it gave her Olivia, who's an incredible woman. She's lived in Europe for years, so maybe you never met her." Lauren tried to process this new information. Claire had a biological daughter Lauren's age? Why had she never heard about her? Why had Olivia never come up at family gatherings? "Claire rarely talks about Olivia," Daniel explained, as if reading her mind. "It's a painful topic. They've been estranged for years, ever since Olivia found out some complicated truths about her origin." A chill ran down Lauren's spine. It felt eerily similar to her own situation. "What kind of truths?" she asked, unable to resist her curiosity. Daniel hesitated, clearly debating whether to share something so personal with someone he'd just met. Finally, he sighed. "I suppose it's okay to share. It's old history now. Olivia found out the man she believed to be her biological father wasn't. Claire's first husband had claimed paternity, but the truth was, she was someone else's child," Lauren whispered. Daniel looked at her in surprise. "Exactly. How did you guess?" Lauren suddenly felt exposed, as if she'd said too much. "It's a common story, I guess," she replied vaguely. "What happened when she found out?" She was devastated, felt betrayed, confronted Claire, demanding to know who her real father was. Daniel paused, sipping his coffee. Claire refused to tell her, said it didn't matter, that the man who raised her was her true father. They had a huge falling out. Olivia left, moved to France, and barely speaks to us anymore. Lauren felt a complex swirl of emotions. On one hand, she deeply sympathized with Olivia's need to know the truth. On the other, she felt a pang of fear imagining that could be her own future, estranged from those she loved in the pursuit of answers. "And you?" Lauren asked, trying to shift the conversation. "Do you have any other children besides Jason and Megan?" Daniel's expression changed slightly, a shadow of sadness crossing his face. "No, we always wanted more, but it didn't happen. Sometimes I wonder—" He trailed off, looking at her with sudden intensity. "This is going to sound strange, but you remind me of someone I met a long time ago. Something in your eyes, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking." Lauren's heart skipped again. He noticed. Of course he noticed. How could he not? "Maybe we've met before," she said, keeping her tone light. "Maybe." Daniel smiled, though his eyes remained thoughtful. I worked at the local hospital for a few years before I moved. Met a lot of people back then. The mention of the hospital pushed Lauren to a sudden, risky question. Daniel, can I ask you something personal? Of course, he replied, a bit surprised. Have you ever… Lauren hesitated. Have you ever wondered if you might have children out there you don't know about? From earlier relationships, maybe? Daniel looked surprised, then let out a soft laugh. That's a peculiar question. But no, I'm pretty sure I don't. Before Claire, I didn't have many serious relationships, and I was always careful. He tilted his head. Why do you ask? Lauren felt her cheeks burn. Just curious. Sorry if I was too direct. Not at all. Daniel smiled. There's something very familiar about you, Lauren. Like we've known each other for years, not minutes. It's strange, isn't it? Maybe it's just the family connection, Lauren offered, the irony not lost on her. Even if it's distant. Maybe, Daniel agreed. They talked for another hour. Daniel shared stories about his career as a doctor, his travels, his children. Lauren was surprised by how many interests they shared. Classic literature, jazz, cooking. Every small similarity was like another puzzle piece sliding into place, forming a clearer image of the bond they unknowingly shared. When they finally said goodbye, Daniel held her hands briefly. It was a pleasure getting to know you better, Lauren. I hope we can meet again before you leave town. I'd like that, Lauren replied sincerely. As Daniel walked out of the cafe, Lauren sat back down, feeling both strangely light and unbearably heavy. Jacob approached and sat in the chair Daniel had just left. How'd it go? He asked gently. Lauren looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. He's so much a part of me, Jacob. Our tastes, our mannerisms. It's like looking at a version of what I might be in 30 years, if I were a man. Jacob reached across the table and took her hand. So, what does that mean for you? Lauren took a deep breath, trying to make sense of the whirlwind inside her. It means I have to make a decision. A real one. As they left the cafe, Lauren noticed the town bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. The familiar streets, the shops, the park where she'd grown up. It all looked different now, illuminated by the truth she had uncovered, the connection she had just experienced. Can we walk for a while? She asked Jacob. I need to think. They strolled in silence through the Central Park, the same one where they'd talked that morning. Lauren felt transformed, like she'd lived a lifetime in a matter of hours. Claire has a daughter, she said finally. Olivia, same age as me, also the result of an affair. They don't speak because Claire wouldn't tell her who her real father was. Jacob looked at her surprised. That's an extraordinary coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. Not like this, Lauren shook her head. It's like history is repeating itself somehow. Like fate is showing me what might happen if I go down a certain path. Or maybe, Jacob said gently, it's showing you that there's more than one way to handle the truth, that you can choose a different path. Lauren thought about that as they sat on a bench overlooking the small lake, where ducks and swans glided peacefully. I think I know what I need to do, she said at last. It won't be easy, and it might not be what everyone wants, but it's the only way I can move forward without losing myself in the process. What is it? Lauren looked out at the water, glowing with sunset hues of orange and pink. I need to talk to them. All of them. Diane, Robert, Rebecca. We need to decide as a family what to do about Daniel. I won't make this decision alone. Jacob smiled, giving her hand a light squeeze. That sounds like the Lauren I know. Clear-headed, even in the toughest moments. When they returned to her parents' house, Lauren found everyone gathered in the dining room, Diane, Robert, and Rebecca, as if they'd been waiting for her. There was a tension in the air, a sense of anticipation. How did it go? Rebecca asked, breaking the silence. Lauren looked at each of them before answering. We need to talk, all of us, together, about what happens next, about Daniel. Robert nodded, as if he'd been expecting this. Diane looked anxious, but didn't protest. Rebecca gave her a small, encouraging smile. "It's time we stop keeping secrets in this family," Lauren continued, her voice steady and clear. "It's time we decide, together, how we handle the truth." As the family gathered for that long-overdue conversation, Lauren felt a strange peace settle over her heart. She didn't know exactly what the future held, what decision they would come to about Daniel, about the truth, but she knew one thing for sure. She would no longer carry the weight of rejection she'd felt all her life. The truth, as painful as it was, had finally given her what she had always longed for, an understanding of who she was and where she came from. And with that understanding came the freedom to choose who she would be next. As she sat with her family, complicated, imperfect, but still hers, Lauren felt, for the first time in a very long time, that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. And that, in itself, was its own kind of victory. The dining room was cloaked in tense silence. Lauren took her seat at the oak table that had witnessed countless family dinners over the years, some joyful, many shadowed by veiled criticism and painful comparisons. Now, that same table would serve as the stage for the most important conversation they had ever had as a family. Robert sat at his usual place at the head of the table, while Diane sat to his right, looking strangely small, as if she had lost not only her usual arrogance, but a piece of herself. Rebecca chose the seat beside Lauren, a silent gesture of solidarity that did not go unnoticed. "So," Robert began, his voice gentle but steady, "what have you decided, Lauren?" Lauren looked at each face around the table before answering. "I haven't decided anything on my own. That's why we're here." She took a deep breath. "I met Daniel today, and it was eye-opening. He's a good man, kind, intelligent, passionate about the same things I love. There are so many pieces of him in me. It's almost frightening." Diane lowered her eyes, guilt etched in every line of her face. "But I also learned something interesting," Lauren continued. "Claire has a daughter, Olivia, around my age, born from an affair before her relationship with Daniel. Olivia found out the man who raised her wasn't her biological father and demanded to know the truth. When Claire refused to tell her, Olivia cut ties. They've barely spoken in years." Rebecca's eyes widened. "That's an incredible coincidence. Or a warning," Robert suggested gently. "Or a lesson," Lauren added. "I've been thinking a lot about what family really means, about truth and secrets, about what truly matters in the end." She looked directly at Diane. "Mom, for years I felt like you hated me, like I would never be enough in your eyes, no matter how hard I tried. Now I understand why. Every time you looked at me, you saw your mistake, your guilt. You saw Daniel." Diane nodded slowly, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. "And, Dad," Lauren turned to Robert, "you're the strongest man I know. You chose to love me unconditionally, even knowing I didn't share your blood. You're my father in every way that truly matters." Robert reached across the table and held Lauren's hand firmly. "And Rebecca," Lauren smiled at her sister, "I think we never gave ourselves the chance to really know each other, to be true sisters, without the shadow of competition Mom created between us." Rebecca returned the smile, her eyes also misty. "So, what will I do about Daniel?" Lauren continued. "That's not a decision I can or should make alone. It affects all of us, and it affects Claire, Jason, Megan, and their children too. The truth has the power to destroy entire families." Diane finally found her voice. "What do you mean, Lauren? What are you proposing?" Lauren drew a deep breath before answering. "I'm proposing that we make this decision together, as a family, that we're honest with each other about what we really want and fear. That, for once, we face this as a unit, not as adversaries." Robert nodded slowly, pride gleaming in his eyes. "I'll go first," Rebecca offered. "Honestly, I'm afraid of what this revelation would do to Aunt Claire, to our cousins. They have a stable, happy life, Daniel is a good husband and father. Telling this now, after so many years. She shook her head. But I also understand your need to know your origins, Lauren. It's your right. My biggest fear, Robert admitted, is regret. Whatever decision we make will have consequences, and no one can predict what they'll be. If we reveal the truth, we can't take it back. If we keep it secret, we'll always wonder if we did the right thing. All eyes turned to Diane, who seemed to be waging an internal war. I've lived in fear for over 30 years, she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. Fear that the truth would come out, that everything I built would collapse. That fear turned me into someone I barely recognize. She looked directly at Lauren. And it made me hurt the person who least deserved to suffer for my mistakes. You, my daughter. The word daughter, spoken with such emotion, struck Lauren deeply. It was the first time she could remember Diane referring to her that way, with genuine love, not obligation. Daniel and I had a brief affair when we were young, Diane continued, her voice steadier now. He never knew about the pregnancy. When I found out I was expecting, I knew it couldn't be Robert's. We hadn't… Well, she blushed slightly. I told Robert the truth before the wedding. He could have left me, and no one would have blamed him. But instead, he offered me forgiveness and love. He promised to raise the baby as his own. Robert gently squeezed Diane's hand. It was the easiest decision I ever made, he said simply. The problem, Diane went on, is that I never forgave myself. And unfairly, I turned that self-hatred into resentment toward you, Lauren, as if you were the one at fault, not me. Tears streamed freely down her face now. If I could go back, if I could do it all over again. She shook her head, unable to finish. Lauren surprised everyone, including herself, by standing and walking over to Diane. She knelt beside her mother and took her hands. We can't change the past, Mom, but we can choose how we move forward from here. For a long moment, mother and daughter simply looked at each other. Really looked, perhaps for the first time. Lauren saw not the cold, critical figure of her childhood, but a deeply human woman, flawed and afraid, who had made mistakes and suffered for them in her own bitter currency of guilt. What do you want, Lauren? Diane asked softly. What do you really want to do about Daniel? Lauren thought carefully before responding. Meeting him today gave me something I didn't know I needed. A sense of connection, of understanding where I come from. I saw parts of myself reflected in him, and that was healing in a way. She paused. But I also saw the man he is now. A devoted husband, a loving father, a proud grandfather. A man who built his life around the choices he made, just like all of us. So you don't want to tell him? Rebecca asked. Part of me does, Lauren admitted. But that would be for selfish reasons. And at what cost? Destroying Aunt Claire's marriage? Shattering Jason and Megan's trust in the father they've always known? Creating another cycle of pain and secrets? Like what happened with Olivia? What are you saying then? Robert asked. Lauren took a deep breath. I'm saying that maybe some truths don't need to be revealed in order for us to heal. That maybe the most important thing isn't whether Daniel knows he's my biological father, but that I understand and accept who I am. All the elements that shaped me, including his DNA and your unconditional love, Dad. Robert smiled, his eyes shining with restrained tears. So, you're not going to tell him? Diane asked, a mix of relief and surprise in her voice. Not now, Lauren said. Not while there's so much at stake for other innocent people. Maybe one day, when circumstances are different. But for now, she looked around the table, at her family. For now, I want to focus on healing what's broken here, between us, on building something new from the truth we now all share. A silence fell over the table as everyone absorbed Lauren's words. It was Rebecca who spoke first. I think that's the most courageous and selfless decision you could have made, she said, squeezing her sister's shoulder. Are you sure, Lauren? Robert asked. That's a big truth to carry on your own. I won't be carrying it alone, Lauren replied. looking at each of them. Not anymore. We have each other now, with no more secrets between us. And that, to me, is worth more than any public revelation. Suddenly, Diane stood, her legs unsteady. I need to show you something, Lauren." She hurried out of the room and upstairs. The others exchanged puzzled glances until Diane returned moments later, carrying an intricately carved wooden box. "I've kept this hidden for 32 years, she said, placing the box on the table. "Just as Robert kept memories for you, I did too. Though for the wrong reasons, at first." With trembling hands, Diane opened the box. Inside was a small photo album, some yellowed letters, and a sealed envelope. "These are your first photos," Diane said, opening the album. "From the hospital, your first days home. Look how beautiful you were, even as a newborn." Lauren looked at the photos in awe. She had never seen baby pictures of herself. Diane had always favored Rebecca's, leaving Lauren to believe her own simply didn't exist. "I kept all of this in secret," Diane continued. "At first, out of fear, evidence that could raise questions. But over time," she took a breath, "over time, they became treasures I couldn't let go of. Memories of the daughter I loved, but didn't know how to show it." Lauren flipped through the album slowly, seeing herself as a baby in Diane's arms, her mother smiling genuinely in the oldest photos. There were pictures of her crawling, taking first steps, blowing out candles on a cake with a single candle. "And this," Diane picked up the sealed envelope, "is a letter I wrote to you the day you were born. I never had the courage to give it to you. Until now." Lauren accepted the envelope with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed with age, her name written in Diane's elegant script. "Can I open it now?" she asked softly. Diane nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. Carefully, Lauren unfolded the letter written over 3 decades ago. "My dear Lauren, you were born today, and I am now the mother of a beautiful, perfect girl. Your eyes, so unlike mine or Robert's, are windows to a soul already wise beyond understanding. There's so much I want to say, to explain. So many reasons behind the secret surrounding your birth. But in this moment, as I watch you sleeping peacefully in my arms, I can think of only one thing. You are a miracle I don't deserve. The road that brought us here was crooked, marked by choices I'm not always proud of. But you, my daughter, you are perfect, innocent, a new beginning. I promise you now, as I hold your tiny hands, that I will do everything I can to protect you, to love you as you deserve to be loved, to be the mother you need me to be. One day, maybe, I'll find the courage to share the whole truth. Until then, know this. You are loved, deeply, completely, eternally loved, with all my heart. Your mother." When Lauren finished reading, the room was silent, except for Diane's soft sobs. Lauren looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her own face. "What happened?" she asked gently. "To the mother who wrote that letter? Who made those promises?" Diane wiped her tears, trying to collect herself. "She got lost," she finally said. "In fear, in guilt, in shame. She forgot the only promise that really mattered, to love you unconditionally." She took a shaky breath. "But I never stopped loving you, Lauren. I just didn't know how to show it. I couldn't get past my own demons to be the mother you deserved." Lauren stood and, without hesitation, embraced Diane. Not the stiff, formal hug they'd rarely shared, but a real embrace, heart to heart. "It's never too late to start over," Lauren whispered, "to be the family we were always meant to be." As mother and daughter embraced, Robert and Rebecca joined them, forming a circle of entwined arms, a family finally united, not by blood or obligation, but by choice and genuine love. In the days that followed, something new and fragile began to bloom in the Mitchell household. Lauren extended her stay for another week, during which she had many long conversations with each family member. Honest, sometimes painful, always healing. With Robert, she spoke about her childhood, the precious moments they'd shared, and how his quiet love had been her anchor. With Rebecca, she explored their sisterhood, the competition imposed by Diane that had stolen their chance at true friendship, and how they wanted to rebuild that bond. And with Diane, Lauren had the hardest and most necessary talks. They spoke of the past, of deep wounds and misunderstandings, of unmet expectations and unspoken love. But they also spoke of possibilities, of forgiveness, not forgetting, but the conscious choice to stop letting the past dictate the future. Lauren met with Daniel once more before leaving, for a casual coffee. This time, it was simply to get to know him better, to absorb more of the man who had unknowingly helped bring her into the world. She watched his gestures, the way he spoke, storing each resemblance like a quiet treasure. When they finally said goodbye, Daniel hugged her warmly. "There's something about you, Lauren," he said with a smile. "Something familiar I can't quite explain. Like we've known each other in another life." Lauren just smiled, holding the secret that now felt more like a special connection than a burden. "Maybe it's just how family shapes us," she replied. Even from afar. The night before her departure, Lauren sat on the porch with Jacob, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "So," he said, "how do you feel after all this?" Lauren considered the question. "Like I finally found myself," she answered. "Like all the scattered pieces of who I am finally make sense together." "Will you come back?" Jacob asked. "Yes," Lauren smiled. "Maybe for Christmas. Diane and Robert are talking about visiting me next month, and Rebecca wants to bring the boys to the city for a weekend." Jacob studied her face. "You've changed." "Lighter," Lauren agreed. "I carried the weight of rejection for so long, of never being good enough. And now you know the problem was never you." "Exactly. And that changes everything." They sat in silence as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky. "Do you still think about Daniel?" Jacob asked finally. "I do," Lauren admitted, "and probably always will. He's part of who I am. But I've learned that family is so much more than DNA. It's a choice. It's love. It's the daily commitment to be present, even when it's hard." She smiled. "Robert taught me that. With every quiet act of love over the years, he chose to be my father when he could have walked away." "And Diane? Did you really reconcile?" "We're starting," Lauren said. "There are decades of pain that won't vanish overnight. But for the first time, I feel real hope, that we're both willing to do the hard work to build something new." The next morning, as Lauren prepared to leave, she found Diane in the kitchen making breakfast. "I made your favorite pancakes," Diane said, a little shyly, "with blueberries, like you liked when you were little." Lauren felt a wave of emotion realizing that Diane had always known, had remembered those little things, even when it seemed she didn't care. "Thank you, Mom," she replied, the word now flowing naturally. As they ate, conversation came more easily than Lauren could ever remember. It wasn't perfect, old habits surfaced, but there were also smiles, laughter, and real moments of connection. When it was time to go, the whole family walked her to the taxi. Robert hugged her tightly. "You've always been my daughter," he whispered. "You always will be." Rebecca hugged her next. "Call me when you get home. And think about that children's book idea." Finally, Diane approached. She hesitated briefly, then embraced Lauren. A hug full of decades of unspoken love, regret, and hope. "Come home soon," Diane said. "We'll be waiting." In the taxi on the way to the airport, Lauren looked out at the town where she'd grown up, where so much pain and joy had shaped who she was. It all looked different now, not through the lens of rejection, but of understanding and forgiveness. She pulled Daniel's photo from her pocket, looking at the man who would never know he was her biological father. There was peace in that now, not doubt, not conflict. Maybe one day, when the truth wouldn't break so many lives, she'd tell him. For now, it was enough to carry that truth in her heart, alongside the new understanding that family, true family, isn't built on shared blood, but on chosen love. on the conscious decision to see past faults and failures, to forgive the unforgivable, and to begin again, as many times as it takes. Lauren tucked the photo away and picked up her phone, beginning to write. The words came easily, forming the opening of a new book. Not fiction this time, but her own story, her journey of discovery and reconciliation. My mother used to say my sister was always better than me, she wrote. It took me 32 years to realize that wasn't true. Not for her, and not for me. This is the story of how I discovered who I really am, and how, in the process, I found my way back home. As the plane took off, carrying her back to her life in the city, Lauren felt strangely whole. For the first time, she wasn't running from her past or her family, but stepping forward with renewed strength, with understanding, with forgiveness. And maybe, she thought as the clouds parted to reveal an endlessly blue sky, that was the greatest gift truth could offer. Not just knowledge, but freedom. The freedom to be, finally and fully, herself. If you followed Lauren's story to the very end, and were moved by her journey of discovery, pain, and reconciliation, we'd love to hear from you. Comment the word truth if you watched all the way through and connected with this powerful story about family secrets and forgiveness. Share it with someone you know will be touched by this deep narrative about the true meaning of family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Thanks for the coffee, and see you next time.